Mercedes-Benz is one of the oldest and most famous luxury car brands in the world, with a value of roughly $80 billion. Today, these cars are seen as symbols of status, wealth, and high performance. Because of that, many people forget how modest the company's beginning really was. The story began with a poor young engineer who faced rejection, struggle, and repeated failure while chasing what seemed like an impossible idea. He wanted to build a vehicle that could move without horses. Almost nobody believed in him. Yet he kept going, and in time, he proved his critics wrong. His small dream eventually grew into the first major automobile company in the world during the late 19th century. But the company's history did not remain bright forever. What began as an inspiring tale later became much darker when the business made money by supplying military vehicles to Nazi Germany while relying on forced labor. So get comfortable, because today we are diving into the remarkable and troubling story of Mercedes-Benz and the man who helped bring the automobile to life, Karl Benz. Karl Benz was born in November 1844 in the German city of Karlsruhe. He came from a poor family. His father worked as a locomotive driver and earned very little, only enough to barely support the household. Then tragedy struck early. When Karl was only 2 years old, his father died. That left Karl and his mother in a very difficult position with almost no financial security. His early life was filled with hardship. There was not much money, not much comfort, and often not enough food. Even so, his mother refused to let poverty decide her son's future. She sacrificed whatever she could so Karl could receive a proper education. Her effort made a huge difference. As a child, Karl showed unusual talent. He learned quickly and stood out in subjects like chemistry and mechanics. His mind was naturally drawn toward how things worked. By the age of 15, Karl had already decided on his path. He wanted to become an engineer, just as his father had worked with machines and engines. He passed the entrance exam and entered the University of Karlsruhe to study mechanical engineering. There, he met a man who would have a deep influence on the way he thought, Ferdinand Redenbacher. Redenbacher was an important figure in German engineering. He helped turn mechanical work from simple workshop labor into a serious scientific field. He also believed that steam engines would not remain the future forever. That idea stayed with Karl. Under Redenbacher's guidance, Karl began thinking more seriously about a carriage that could move on its own. Since he regularly rode bicycles, he became especially interested in using lightweight mechanics to create a new kind of vehicle. At that time, Karl was not the only one thinking this way. Other inventors had already tried to create self-moving road vehicles. Some had limited success, but none of those machines truly worked well for everyday use. Most of them depended on steam. Karl saw the weakness in that. With Redenbacher's influence, he became convinced that a different type of engine would be needed. Many people laughed at this dream. To them, it sounded unrealistic, strange, and unnecessary. But Karl did not let that stop him. He believed it could be done. He only needed the chance to do it. After graduating at the age of 19, Karl spent the next several years moving through different jobs. He did not feel fully satisfied in any of them. Still, he paid close attention and learned from each experience. Everything he saw would later help him. In 1871, when he was 27, Karl started a business with a mechanic named August Ritter. Together, they opened an iron foundry and mechanical workshop in Mannheim. On the surface, it looked like the beginning of a stable career. But Karl had a second mission in mind. While working in the shop, he continued chasing his real dream. At first, having a partner seemed useful. Running a business alone was difficult. But that hope quickly faded. Ritter turned out to be unreliable and difficult to depend on. Then, the company was hit with more trouble when local authorities seized their tools. The business began falling apart during its first year. It was a dangerous moment. Karl could have lost everything. But around that same time, he met someone who would become one of the most important people in his life, Bertha Benz. Bertha came from a wealthy family, but she was intelligent, determined, and deeply loyal. She saw Karl's talent clearly and hated watching his future being damaged. So she made a bold decision. Using money from her dowry, she bought out Ritter's share of the company. That move gave Karl and Bertha control. It saved the business and changed Karl's life. Together, they managed to keep the company alive. Over the following decade, Karl continued working through pressure and setbacks. Yet these years also revealed how gifted he truly was. His experiments became more advanced, and in 1879 he successfully developed a two-stroke gas engine. That was a major step forward. To bring in more money, he began registering patents for the inventions he created. Among them were important parts and systems. Each invention brought him a little closer to the machine he had imagined for so long. But even with those achievements, the business itself remained unstable. Costs kept increasing and financial pressure grew worse. Banks eventually insisted that the company be reorganized and turned into a joint-stock corporation. Karl had little choice. In 1882, the company was restructured and outside investors came in. The result was painful. Karl ended up with only 5% of the shares. He lost control. His influence inside the company became weak. Important decisions were now made without him. Even his ideas were pushed aside. He felt deeply hurt by this. After everything he had sacrificed, he was now a minor figure in his own company. Unable to accept that situation, Karl left the business the next year. It was a bitter moment. But instead of breaking him, it strengthened his resolve. Karl's interest in bicycles soon connected him with new partners. Together, they formed a new company called Benz and Cie. This venture found success much faster and became profitable. For the first time, Karl had steady income and support. With a stronger foundation, he gave his full attention to building an automobile. Instead of modifying a carriage, he designed the whole vehicle around the engine itself. That choice made the machine more balanced and advanced. In 1885, Karl completed it. It was called the Benz Patent Motorwagen, the first real automobile. It had 3 wheels and 2 seats. It used a gasoline-powered 4-stroke engine. The engine produced around 2/3 of a horsepower. Its top speed was about 7 miles per hour. By modern standards, that sounds slow, but at the time it was extraordinary. Karl understood how important this invention was. So in 1886 he introduced it to the public. The response was far from simple. A few people were impressed, but many others were doubtful. Some feared the machine would explode. Others thought it was unnatural. A number of people even described Karl as something close to a devil, riding through town in a terrifying machine without horses. Even inside his own business, belief was weak. His partners questioned whether anyone would ever want such a vehicle. To them, it seemed like an expensive novelty. Why would people buy something that was not much faster than a horse, could break down, and needed fuel to keep moving? It was not an easy argument to answer. Still, Karl did not give up. He trusted what he had built. In 1888, he began producing automobiles for sale. That made him the first person in history to manufacture cars commercially. But even then, the world had not fully accepted the invention. The breakthrough came from the person who had believed in him from the beginning, Bertha. One summer morning in 1888, while Karl was still asleep, Bertha made a daring move. Without asking for permission and without informing the authorities, she took the car and left. She brought along her 2 sons. Then she drove from Mannheim to Pforzheim, covering about 66 miles. That trip became the first long-distance journey ever completed by automobile. It was a historic moment. It was also incredibly difficult. The roads were rough and unreliable. The vehicle suffered mechanical problems. Fuel was hard to find. At one point, Bertha had to stop at a pharmacy to buy petroleum. That stop effectively became the first gas station in history. During the trip, she also handled repairs herself. She improvised solutions, kept the machine moving, and refused to turn back. After more than 12 exhausting hours, she and her sons arrived safely. That journey changed everything. It showed the world that the automobile was not just a strange experiment. It could actually travel long distances. It could work. It had a future. People began paying attention. Karl's invention no longer seemed like fantasy. It now looked like the beginning of something real. After that, Benz and Cie expanded quickly. By 1890, it had become one of the biggest engine producers in Germany. With new partners managing the commercial side of the company, Karl was able to spend more time improving his designs. He introduced several important advances, including better steering systems, stronger engines, and improved transmission technology. Then, in 1893, he released another vehicle, the Benz Victoria. This model was more dependable and sold well. It helped strengthen the company even further. But the model that truly changed the company's future came next. That car was the Benz Velo. The Velo is often recognized as the world's first mass-produced automobile. More than 1,200 of them were built. That number was remarkable for the time. Because of its success, Benz and Cie became the largest automobile manufacturer in the world. Karl had done what once seemed impossible. He had turned a dream people mocked into a real industry. But success never remains unchallenged for long. Soon, serious competition appeared. A rival business known as Daimler Motor Gesellschaft started gaining strength. It was led by Gottlieb Daimler and Wilhelm Maybach. Their cars were faster, newer in design, and increasingly attractive to buyers. Then, in 1901, they introduced a vehicle that changed the market, the Mercedes 35 HP. This car looked far more like the modern automobile people recognize today. It had a better layout, improved stability, and much stronger performance. It made a huge impression. Suddenly, Karl's company no longer looked so far ahead of everyone else. Pressure began to rise inside Benz and Cie. Tension grew around the direction of the company. Internal disagreements increased. Eventually, Karl withdrew from active management. Even so, both companies continued moving forward. Then the world changed again. After the First World War, Germany entered a period of severe economic collapse. Inflation soared. Industry suffered. Survival became difficult even for major companies. Under those conditions, rivalry became less important than survival. So in 1926, the two longtime competitors joined together. Benz and Cie and Daimler Motor Gesellschaft merged. The new company became known as Daimler-Benz. Its automobiles would carry the name the world knows today, Mercedes-Benz. Karl Benz lived long enough to witness this transformation. He saw the idea he had once built in struggle become part of a global industrial force. He died in 1929 at the age of 84, but the company's story did not stop there. And sadly, one of its darkest chapters was still ahead. When Adolf Hitler rose to power, Germany moved toward war. During the Second World War, Mercedes-Benz became deeply involved in the Nazi war effort. The company manufactured military trucks, engines for aircraft, and other vehicles used by the German military. To keep production going, it relied heavily on forced labor. These workers included prisoners of war and people taken from concentration camps. They did not work by choice. They were exploited under brutal conditions. Many suffered terribly. By 1944, forced laborers made up nearly half of the company's workforce. This remains one of the darkest parts of the company's history. After the war ended in 1945, the company faced destruction and loss. Factories had been damaged. Important facilities were gone. Much of its property and industrial strength had disappeared. Mercedes-Benz had to begin again. Rebuilding was slow and difficult. But over time, the company recovered. By the 1950s, it had once again become respected around the world. Its name grew to represent luxury, engineering quality, performance, and prestige. Today, Mercedes-Benz stands as one of the most valuable and recognizable car brands on Earth. Its vehicles are admired across the globe. But behind all of that success is the story of one determined man. Karl Benz was not born into wealth. He did not begin with power or privilege. He faced loss early in life. He endured poverty, rejection, financial pain, and public doubt. Yet he kept moving forward. And through that determination, he helped turn a bold idea into reality. Without Karl Benz, the history of the automobile would not look the same. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, what story should we cover next? I'll see you in the next one.